Hello, class. This Playposit is about Bootstrap. My name is Samir.
I'm David. I'm Jackson.
I'm Kai.
So starting off with what exactly is Bootstrap? So Bootstrap is a CSS framework and toolkit, and it contains a lot of kind of snippets of reusable code and these just website templates that really help you develop a website way quicker than normally. So a lot of the busy work, like just writing boring CSS code to make your website look pretty, is kind of taken away because Bootstrap does a lot of that for you. Okay, so a little bit of a history lesson. So Bootstrap was developed by Mark Otto and Jacob Thornton, who both worked at Twitter. And it was released on August 2011 on GitHub, and that's a pretty cool beard. Okay, so why Bootstrap? So obviously there's a lot of different like CSS frameworks out there, but we think that Bootstrap is very easy to use for a lot of web programmers with HTML and CSS. And it also has a lot of kind of responsive elements, that one of which we'll learn about later, that make websites kind of accessible and usable across many different devices and browsers. Okay, so it's time for our very first question. Which of the following correctly describe Bootstrap? Bootstrap is a CSS framework, uses a mobile-first model, is a JavaScript library, was developed by Google. So multiple of these might be right. So I'll give y'all a couple seconds to pick your answer. All right. Yeah, it was the first two. It's a CSS framework, and it uses a mobile-first model. It was not a JavaScript library, and it was actually developed at Twitter, not Google. So, yeah, those are both wrong.
How to import Bootstrap. So, similar to jQuery, Bootstrap can be downloaded and hosted, but should be imported from a third-party hosting service, CDN, instead. So you can use these two statements in the head section of your HTML to import Bootstrap. Important reminder about Bootstrap, number 1. Bootstrap requires the HTML5 doc type. So to ensure the proper function of Bootstrap, always add the doctype HTML tag at the top of your HTML code and the correct HTML lang attribute. Reminder 2, Bootstrap is mobile first, so to ensure that everything that it wants to do can render correctly, add the below meta tag to the head of your HTML document that uses Bootstrap. Bootstrap has predefined class names, which can be added to elements to give them certain styles and attributes. For example, class alert danger gives the element this appearance. There must be a containing element for Bootstrap CSS to work properly. The way to define a Bootstrap container is by using the container class as defined by Bootstrap. There are two main types of containers for Bootstrap: container and container fluid. Container has a fixed width, whereas container fluid will take on the width of the screen. All elements should be placed inside of a container class of some kind for good practice. The width of the default container class can be modified with the following classes. You can add -sm, md, lg, xl, or xxl to change the size of your container class. The padding can be modified by adding a second class to the container, pt-asize. It's time for question number 2. True or false? Bootstrap can work on any div element. The answer is false. Bootstrap cannot work on any div element. It must be a container class of some kind. Question number 3. Which of the following are valid Bootstrap container classes? Select multiple if you wish. The answer is that both 1 and 3 are correct. Container extra large and extra extra large are both valid sizes. Container-m is not a valid size. You may be thinking that that was the medium size, but medium requires a D, not just M. -md. And number 4 has the dash left out, which is not the same as an actual Bootstrap container size modifier.
What is a flexbox? So flexbox is a one-dimensional layout model that can rearrange elements inside of it according to the size of the interface. So as you can see on the bottom right, the top part is the flexbox, and page 1, page 2, or the 4 boxes inside of this rectangle are the elements inside of the flexbox. And you can see that page 4, there's like a spacing between page 3 and page 4. So that is possible to do with a flexbox. And to create a flexbox, you would use the CSS attribute display and display flex. So here is a really cool example about why flexboxes are really useful. So before flexboxes, vertical alignment was really hard. But after the creation of flexbox, you can see that with just a very few lines of code, I was able to center the box inside of this massive flexbox. Yeah, so this is why flexbox. So in a flexbox, there's 2 main axes. The main axis, which is generally the horizontal axis, and the cross axis, which is directly perpendicular to the main axis. And you can use these 2 axes to control the placement of your items in the box. You can also use them to scale the items, like bigger or smaller relative to the other items, and you can control the spacing. So back to my vertical alignment example. Here I use the cross axes and the main axis to center the middle box. Okay, question 4. What is the purpose of Flexbox? Okay, so the answer is B. Flexboxes give you more control over your box with 2 defined axes. And here is the reason why. Yeah.
What are grids? Tables in HTML are not always the best way to make grids. Bootstrap offers an easier way of creating containers, rows, and columns, designed with Flexbox. Here's an example. You can use the classes row and columns to make a grid with rows and columns. There are some predefined grid classes that can be used to change the size of columns within a grid. Some examples of these are extra small, small, medium, large, and extra large. You can also change the size of columns specifically by setting the width of each column using a class of column dash a number. For example, column dash 6 will be wider than column dash 5. You can vertically align columns using Flexbox within a row by giving the row the classes align items start, align items center, and align items end. Here's our last question. Maybe not our last question. Here's a question. Which of the following are classes that could be used in a grid? Okay, here are the answers.
Finally, we're going to talk about breakpoints. So, as we mentioned in the beginning of the presentation, one of the great benefits of Bootstrap is that it allows your website to be responsive. And one of the best ways to do that is to use these features called breakpoints. So what a breakpoint does is it allows you to change elements in your web page automatically based on the size of the screen. So you can imagine this would be useful if, for example, if a user is viewing your website on their phone, then the website should obviously look differently than if it's on a large desktop monitor. So the way this can be done, for example, is let us say we have some class that we give an element. So you can say that by default, you want the display to be none, meaning that this element is not visible. But then we can add this line, include media breakpoint up, and in parentheses SM. And what we're telling it is basically now we want the element to be displayed, and we want it to be displayed in a block form. So what this means is that because of this SM tag here, when the screen falls within the dimensions for the small breakpoint, this element will suddenly become visible, and this will continue even as the screen gets bigger and bigger. So if the screen is smaller than the small breakpoint, then the element will disappear, and if it's larger than that, then the element will appear and be displayed in a block form. And that's the end of our, that's the end of our Bootstrap presentation. Thank you so much for watching, and we hope you enjoy working with Bootstrap.
No, we don't.
So my question was the last question.
Thank you very much.
Bye.